How am I getting paid?
Fiat dollars, only
All
fiat.
right, well, I didn't know that. Okay.
Okay. He's a happy man now. He didn't know that. Okay. Naomi, you got a question?
Yep. So just letting you know, I've sent you a bunch of online questions.
Yeah, well,
People
I'm
have been submitting them.
gonna go through them. But what's your question?
My question is for both of you, actually. Now, Peter, would you be willing to take a Bitcoin versus gold bet with Eric Voorhees here tonight?
Well, I think he's already betting on it, and I'm betting against it. So I don't know what the point would be of the bet.
Put your money where your mouth is.
What bet did you have in mind?
Yeah, just you guys could figure out the details yourself. But essentially, you would be shorting Bitcoin, and maybe you would exchange the value. Like if you foresee that in the future gold is going to be worth less than the comparative prices between Bitcoin and gold at the moment, then you would owe each other the opposite whenever the bet ends.
I don't know. It's hard to agree on the exact terms because Bitcoin could go up before it goes down. I mean, I have no idea what bet you want to make.
No, I have a
You can throw one out there.
I have a time. Simple arbitrage. You go long Bitcoin and short gold. Peter goes long gold and short Bitcoin. And in 12 months, we pony up.
Well, that's a tough bet. I mean, Bitcoin could double any moment. Then collapse to zero.
Eric, John Smith will take that bet. I know he will.
But the longer the time period, the more certain I am that I'm right.
36 months?
The shorter the time period, you just
Okay,
don't
no,
know,
this is one of those like classic Julian Simon bet.
You don't
How
know.
about 5 years? How about 5 years, Peter?
Yeah, I mean,
5
years, yes, 5 years. I think.
Okay, 60 months from now, we're going to meet. and we're going to send the prices.
Gold, yes.
It's a simple trade, and you're going to put up your entire honorarium, $2,000. And
right.
you'll put up your $2,000
As long
honorarium.
as he doesn't put it up in Bitcoin. Put up,
Well, it's going to be a fair cut. We're going to arrange something. Very good suggestion, Naomi. We're going to work something out later. Next question.
Hi. So much of both your discussion has been about whether Bitcoin should or should not succeed in this idea. My question is, what would it take you to become convinced of the opposite of your view in terms of, for Eric, Bitcoin will not succeed, not should not, will not. Peter, Bitcoin will succeed, not should, sorry, not should succeed. Thanks.
You got the question? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Play devil's advocate a little
That's
bit.
a great question. Basically, what would it take for me to change my opinion that Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency would replace fiat? If something better than cryptocurrency happened, right, like something that didn't use blockchains at all, but something that hasn't been invented yet that came along that seemed to be objectively better as a form of money, that could do it. Or if I think there was a 5 to 10 year period where the entire crypto market just slowly dwindled towards zero, I would have to assess during that time what was the reasons for that, but that might make me change my opinion. Short of that, these little bubbles that go up and down every few years, they don't bother me at all.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting too, though, Eric. You'll acknowledge that cryptocurrency might ultimately succeed, but it may not be Bitcoin. It may be some other cryptocurrency.
Totally.
In which case, Bitcoin would be worthless.
Yes, totally possible.
And for that very reason, I don't think any cryptocurrency will ever succeed, because I think if something can replace Bitcoin, then something will replace what replaces Bitcoin. Look, I mentioned earlier that Facebook replaced MySpace. In 2 years, Facebook will probably still be pretty big, but judging by the fact that a lot of younger people don't use it anymore, in 20 years, nobody might use it. Nobody knows, right, what's going to come up. And so Facebook shares, maybe they're a good speculation, but you're not going to use it as money. And as far as what could convince me, since I don't share your faith that the volatility will ever go away. See, Eric believes that at some point in time, even though Bitcoin is too volatile today to be money, that at some point in the future, it won't be volatile. I just can't make that leap of faith that the volatility is ever going to go away. I can't see that point. And I do think that if all the people who are holding Bitcoin ever got to the point where they actually thought it had topped out and was going to be stable, then they'd want to cash out. Now they'd want to start buying. You got all these people living in their parents' basements that are Bitcoin millionaires, and they have nothing because they're afraid to sell because they don't want to miss out. So I just can't, in my mind, see how it can ever stop going up or stabilize without collapsing as everybody tries to cash out.
Yeah, okay. We need to get rid of this word faith here, okay? Faith? The reason that people that are in crypto is not because of faith. It's because they've actually used it and they've seen it work, they've read the code, they understand what it's doing. It is an assessment of a technology based on people's opinions of that technology working and using it.
Some people.
Not
I think
faith.
a lot of people just own it because it's going up and they think they're going to get rich.
You can equally apply that to gold, especially after the financial crisis.
Not that many people think they're going to get rich in gold.
Not anymore.
But and that's why you should be buying it. You don't buy what everybody else is buying.
Yeah, go ahead.
Both crypto and gold have a large degree of speculative froth around them, right?
No, there's no speculative. Are there some gold speculators? Yes. Is it frothy? Absolutely not. The froth is not in gold, right? There's a lot of froth in a lot of assets these days, whether it's stocks or bonds or cryptocurrencies. But believe me, there's no froth in gold.
No,
Wow.
I agree with that right now. There's not a lot of froth in gold right now, but there have been bubbles in gold, just as there are bubbles in crypto. And I don't think
Well,
it's
not
fair-
this big, but yes, there have been periods of time, I think, where gold got overvalued. 1980 when it had gone up from $35 an ounce up to $850. It was, too high, and it pulled back, went into a long-term bear market. But not to the extent, the bubble that I think we've seen in cryptocurrencies, I think is unparalleled. I mean, I think this is, when they write the history books and about bubbles, you have the popular delusions and madness of crowds. I mean, cryptocurrencies doesn't even need to be a chapter. It could be its own book. I think even if Bitcoin topped out at 20,000, it still the whole crypto thing might still be the biggest bubble we've ever seen. But it is possible that Bitcoin can make a new high. I'm not smart enough to know. So the bubble could, in fact, get even bigger.
If we looked at the price of Apple shares from the creation of that company up to today, it will have gone through bubbles and it will be at stratospheric heights compared to what it was back then.
Bubbles, bull and bear markets, but not bubbles.
Why is Apple's shares not a huge speculative bubble that will crash to zero, but Bitcoin is?
Well, the difference between a speculative bubble and just being overpriced, right? I mean, you can certainly make an argument that Apple is expensive, not based on its current price multiple. Based on that, Apple is relatively inexpensive. But the question is, can it maintain its dominance? Can it maintain its market share in a free market where everybody is gunning for it? Everybody's trying to outdo it and make a better product, right? Build a better mousetrap. What is the odds that Apple can continue to innovate at the rate of the past and the future, and that its market cap will continue to grow? Eventually, no, it's going to fall. The price is going to drop. But Apple, when you buy stock in Apple, you're buying into a company, you're buying into a revenue stream, you're buying all the physical and tangible assets and goodwill of the company. You get the dividend, you get, but when you buy Bitcoin, you're not buying into anything other than the hype and the potential that somebody else is going to pay a higher price, right? The whole bubble mentality is the greater fool. I'm going to buy it because some greater fool is going to pay me more. And that fool is going to buy it because he's expecting a greater fool to outbid him. Well, eventually you run out of fools, and you're the last fool, and that's it.
That's great. Okay, we have Peter. A question from our vast live stream audience. This one that picks up on the other question about the hypothetical. The technology of gold mining. Let's say that gold does get recognized more and more as money, and it expands its price, doubles, triples, whatever. Are you saying that for all time, this intrinsic notion of yours that gold is always going to be expensive? Can they start mining it from asteroids? I've been told by some gold experts there's more gold in the ocean than we've ever mined in the history of the world. If technology takes off and we can suddenly double and triple the gold supply inside of a few months, what will that do to gold?
Well,
in
look,
terms of its scarcity.
the gold supply has been growing, for thousands of years.
What if there's a technological leap?
Look,
Asteroids, ocean.
we've had technological
Okay,
leaps.
yeah.
We've already obviously mined the cheap gold. But look, is there gold in asteroids? Probably.
In the
I mean,
ocean.
I doubt.
In the ocean.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a lot of stuff in the ocean. I don't know what's down there.
There's more gold
But- but
there's more
if-
gold
if-
in the
look,
ocean than there is anywhere else.
Go
There
to the
is.
ocean and try to get it.
I will tell- okay,
But I
well,
mean, maybe
that's what people are gonna do.
Look, maybe there's a way. Who knows what it's going to cost? Or as I started to say, maybe there's gold in asteroids. I doubt there's an asteroid that's solid gold. I mean, gold is very rare on Earth. It's probably rare all over the universe. And so if there's an asteroid that has some gold, there's probably not a lot of it. But believe me, if they're going to mine gold in asteroids, the price is going to be sky high because they're going to have to mine every last bit of gold on Earth before someone takes a spaceship up to an asteroid and tries to mine the gold up there and then bring it back down to Earth. I mean, that's going to be some expensive gold. And
There is an immense amount of gold in the ocean, just as a matter of fact. But that is a question. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Just Gene, quickly, another great debate. Peter,
guys have done it.
awesome socks. I really love them. Okay, just a quick question for Eric. I have a coworker who prays at the altar of Bitcoin, and I asked him a basic question, and I don't think he answered it adequately, so I'll ask you. You might have touched on something that this could be, but potentially, what do you think is the main obstacle that can impede the growth or the health of Bitcoin?
Well, in Bitcoin's early years, the major obstacle impeding its growth was actually all the libertarians that couldn't see a good thing when it hit them. I think that's finally becoming a non-issue anymore. Bitcoin has grown much larger than the libertarian community around the world. And I think at this point, the biggest impediment to its adoption is simply that most individuals still want governments to manage money for them. Until that changes, Bitcoin, I think, will always be playing second fiddle. But I bet on Bitcoin largely because I know that the history of money is full of governments losing control over their fiats. And there has never been a financial crisis in which cryptocurrency actually existed. The next time that happens, I know where a lot of the people are going to be going. And so that's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, that obviously the libertarian community, other than maybe criminals, were the first to embrace Bitcoin. But what's interesting is all of the properties that the libertarians found so appealing have actually been lost in the effort to bring more people into the bubble and mainstream it for the institutional investors. All the regulation, the government getting involved. I mean, now you want to open up an account, all the KYC of a bank account. They need your passport. They need your driver's license, a utility bill. The transaction costs have gone up. The government oversight. It's not now this thing that you're operating underneath the radar, right? You're free from the banking system and Big Brother watching your transactions. And gone are the days where it costs next to nothing to transfer, the Bitcoin because the transaction costs have gone up. So I think Bitcoin has lost a lot of that appeal in order to get the hedge funds involved and the big money in. And I think that, this is great for the libertarians who got in early and now they have, somebody to sell to. They have it, they can cash out. But if they actually stop and think, what Bitcoin has become is not what they originally embraced. It's something entirely different. It's what they argued against.
So totally disagree with that. Bitcoin has absolutely grown, and many more people are involved now than they used to be, and a much higher portion of those people are no longer libertarian types. And that's okay. That's kind of all part of the plan. To say that Bitcoin has lost its properties that made it useful in the beginning is simply not true.
Not really useful.
Well, hold on.
Kind of attracted the libertarians
Hold on.
to it. Now it's all the greed, and I'm going to get rich.
Okay, that has happened both in gold and crypto, so I don't think that that's any different there. There is no government in the world that knows how many Bitcoins I have. That was true in 2011, and it's true today, and it'll be true 10 years from now.
But gold has never been about getting rich. Gold is about not becoming poor, right? Gold is about preserving. Gold is about preserving wealth. It's a store of value. It is not a get-rich-quick scheme. People are not buying Bitcoin today to store anything or preserve anything. People are buying Bitcoin because they think the price is going to go up. So they're trying to accumulate wealth by owning Bitcoin. People buy gold in order to preserve the wealth they've already accumulated.
Okay.
Are you saying that there's not a single person that owns Bitcoin that did it for anything other than speculative fervor?
No, I'm saying initially a lot of people got in for all sorts of reasons. But I would say that most of the people who have bought Bitcoin in the last 6 months to a year, most of those people were motivated solely by profit.
Gold has never been about getting rich. Okay, but the question. But the question.
If you're panning for gold in the ocean, you're trying to get rich. But
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
You're buying it as a store of value, as a conservative way to protect.
It's only what we saw in Deadwood. Okay, I agree with that. But the question. Okay, I'm sorry. A big final question. Could you finally address this question that Peter's challenged? The scarcity of Bitcoin. He said there's all these forks having to do with Bitcoin. So is Bitcoin only 21 million ounces, or is Peter right? With all those forks and whatever, there's a lot more than 21 million going to be involved.
There's only 21 million Bitcoin. There can never be more than
But what about the forks? The forks.
That's
like a lot.
not Bitcoin. Just as silver is not gold, just as iron is not gold, Litecoin, Dash, and Monero are not Bitcoin.
Okay, unfortunately.
But there's no real difference. They all have the same property. There's a big difference between gold and silver.
Well,
Just
okay.
factually incorrect.
Okay. Unfortunately.
What can I do with? All right. Well, if I was on a desert island with my Litecoin, what could I do with it that I can't do with my Bitcoin?
You can do about as much as you could do with gold on a desert
No,
island.
I can do a lot with gold on a desert island.
Well, okay.
I can melt it into a bowl.
It's the old
to
economist
eat some
joke,
food
assume-
that I find. I can
assume-
bash something with it.
Time for that economist joke. Assume we have a can opener. The economist on a desert island. But that aside, guys, you were great, and you are going to now finally be able to give the final bashing in the 5 minute of summation. And so, Peter, as the negative, you go last, and Eric has 5 minutes to sum up. Take it away, Eric. Take the podium.
All right, this has been fun. So I first learned about Bitcoin in 2011. I fell in love with it both as a fascinating economic experiment and as one of the greatest tools ever invented for the advancement of human liberty. I wrote an article in May of 2011 called Bitcoin and the Separation of Money and State. In that article, I asked, why are Bitcoins valuable? And I answered by saying that they simply possessed those attributes of money that are most desired. Bitcoin was $3, and almost nobody knew about it or cared about it. A year later, I wrote another article called Bitcoin, the Libertarian Introduction. This article pointed out that if a marketplace tends to choose the medium of exchange which best works as money, and Bitcoin's specific attributes make it excellent money, then perhaps the marketplace will, over time, increasingly use it for such. By then, Bitcoin had risen over 100% to $7. A year later, in May of 2013, I gave a speech at the San Jose Bitcoin Conference called The Role of Bitcoin as Money. Once again, I argued that Bitcoin's properties would lead it to keep gaining market share against fiat. By then, Bitcoin had risen more than 1,000% to over $150, clearly a bubble, as Peter said later that year. In December of that year, I got to have my first debate with Peter Schiff on his podcast. Yet again, I stated that the technology was immensely valuable and that Bitcoin's utility as an unblockable global payment network meant that it would keep growing. By then, Bitcoin had risen another 500% to over $800. Again, Peter called it a bubble, a Beanie Baby fad, a Ponzi scheme. He actually said that it was no better than fiat. Fast forward to today, even after the crash from December's frothy highs, Bitcoin is yet 800% higher still at $6,000. Every major financial institution and government in the world is studying this right now. This year's Davos may have well been called Blockchains, How Worried Should We Be? At what point do I get to call scoreboard here? This isn't some sci-fi future thing anymore. Crypto is currently pulling in the global financial system and restructuring it through a process of free market metamorphosis. And it is about damn time that we had free markets again. Look, I can sit here and tell you guys all the cool features of Bitcoin, which I have been doing for 7 years, but when it comes to the resolution being made tonight, there is really just one most critical point to understand, and that is this. Bitcoin cannot be debased. It cannot be debased, and it is now competing with the incumbent currency, US dollar fiat, which not only can be debased, but exists in a state of perpetual institutionalized debasement. This dynamic will encourage a virtuous cycle in which rational actors at the margins decide to hold the non-decaying form of money to the exclusion of that which decays. This is the primary reason gold itself has retained its position in society. It cannot be debased by governments either. When comparing two potential monetary alternatives, the one which is the hardest to debase is probably the one you should prefer, other factors being equal. But here the other factors aren't equal. One of them can also be transferred anywhere on Earth between any two people instantly at near zero cost and can't be shut down or censored. How's that for intrinsic value? But ignore for a moment every interesting advantage of Bitcoin. Ignore the ease with which one can send it. Ignore the censorship resistance. Ignore the universality, the fungibility, and the divisibility. Ignore the impossibility of counterfeit. True, Bitcoin surpasses US dollar fiat in all of these, but ignore those for a moment. Focus purely on the fact, the mathematical fact, that Bitcoin cannot be debased no matter how many guns a government wields, no matter how much propaganda it spews, or innocent people it imprisons. It does not matter how many meetings the Federal Reserve holds in its halls of chiseled marble. Every year, fiat oozes from the sewer of state. As a consequence, it has lost 98% of its value in the past 100 years. How foolish does one need to be to hold it over the next 100? Compared to gold, Bitcoin provides an efficient digital apparatus of payment and exchange that can enable commerce rather than hinder it. But more importantly, compared to fiat, Bitcoin bestows a gift for which humanity will grow increasingly hungry, an open, honest financial system that is under the control of no man, committee, or nation. Bitcoin will find its way into every tributary of economic activity, and with this gradual adoption, Bitcoin will come to replace fiat as the preferred money and medium of exchange for all sovereign people on Earth.
Well, as I admitted before, of all the bubbles that I have not participated in during my career, the one I most regret is Bitcoin. I mean, clearly, if there was ever a bubble that was tailor-made for me, that was the one, right? But just because the bubble has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger doesn't change the nature of what it is. And the fact that you are right now, that there is so much attention being paid to Bitcoin, that wasn't being paid to it when it was $3 a coin, but it is being paid to it now. I think back in December when it was making its peak and the futures were debuting, I was talking on my podcast and I decided to rename CNBC Crypto News Bitcoin because that's all they talked about. It was nonstop. Of course, they won't have me on to criticize it. They won't have anyone on to criticize it. All they have is one person after another talking about how great it is and how it's going to keep going up. And I would suggest that when you have such mainstream, buying, that you've probably reached a peak. I mean, I brought my high school son here. He's got his friend here from high school, and they both own Bitcoin, although my son was smart enough to sell his. He sold his at 1900, so don't clap. But his friend still has his. But when the high school kids are buying it, look, it's not the bottom anymore. People still trying to tell me, it's the ground floor. Buy your Bitcoins now because they're going to $1 million. Look, I could, just because I didn't buy them at $3 or $50 or $1,000 or $5,000 doesn't mean I'm going to make the mistake of succumbing to the greed and buying into them now, because that's how all bubbles die. First you have the skeptics, they don't want to buy it, and then eventually they capitulate, they throw in the towel, their greed overwhelms them, and they buy in, and you make a top, and the market's going to collapse. And that's what's going to happen. I have a pretty good track record of seeing these bubbles, whether it's in the real estate market or the dot-com market. I mean, if it looks like a bubble, quacks like a bubble, walks like a bubble, it's a bubble. You talk about debasing, that Bitcoin can't be debased. The whole term debasement comes from taking a precious metal and coin and then putting a base metal into it, so you don't really get as much gold as you thought you were getting because you've got some lesser metal instead. Well, you can't debase Bitcoin because there's nothing to debase. There's no value there to start with. It doesn't matter if you had some other cryptocurrency because you've got nothing. And it doesn't matter, whether, I don't have all the Bitcoin that I thought I have, because at the end of the day, there's nothing there. I don't think that the current fiat system will withstand the test of time. I mean, fiat money has been tried and failed all throughout history. I don't think this giant experiment is going to succeed any better. As Eric mentioned earlier, we've only been on this fiat system since 1971, when the U.S. went off the gold standard, and prior to that, we convinced everybody to be on a dollar standard. But the reason the world held dollars was because the dollar was backed by gold, and not only backed by gold, but convertible on demand into gold. And so I think this experiment is going to end. It has done incredible amounts of damage, so I think it's going away. But I don't think we're going to go to Bitcoin or any of these other fiat cryptocurrencies. I think we will go back to where we were. I think the dollar will once again be backed by gold at some point, at some exchange rate, and maybe there will be private companies that will compete with governments by issuing cryptocurrencies backed by something. I happen to think it's best to back them by gold, but somebody could back them by some other commodity. As long as you have money that's backed with something of stable, reliable value that you can relate to other goods and services, then it can be the basis of medium exchange. I mean, modern technology does make it easier. Today, I would think that gold today, with the technology that exists, is easier for gold to function as money than at any point in human history. And that is the real advancement that we have. Whether it's blockchain or anything else, it's the ability to digitally transfer stored gold around the world, right? That's what is the evolution or the advancement of money. It's the improvement on what works. You don't need to reinvent something that works. Gold has worked as money since it was first created. In fact, the most prosperous period in American history was when we were on the purest gold standard in American history. And I think that hopefully America will re-embrace that monetary heritage once again, and hopefully the rest of the world will also enjoy the benefits of sound money and move off of the constant booms and busts associated with fiat money. And I think it's ironic that one of the booms and busts is in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And I think that the crypto bubble is going to pop before the overall fiat bubble pops. And if anything, it actually might end up achieving the opposite of its purpose, because it actually might succeed in doing the one thing that you shouldn't be able to do. It'll actually succeed in making fiat money look good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Eric, for your superb insights. Again, the resolution reads, Bitcoin or a similar form of cryptocurrency will eventually replace government's fiat money as the preferred medium of exchange. And so we're going to open the final vote. We are ready to close the vote, so could you bring me the results? And I will give it the expert style. Okay. All right. The resolution was, again, Bitcoin will eventually replace government's fiat money as a preferred medium of exchange. The yes votes started at 40% and rose to 55% in the final. So, your side, Eric, picked up 15 points. That's the number to beat. Peter did not beat that number. Went from 40% a little bit down to 31. So, Eric, you get the Tootsie Roll. Congratulations. Congratulations.